What's up, ladies and gentlemen? This is Chris, and this is We Love. Actually, it's been too long. It's Barn on 11970. See, old habits die hard. So I got some very important stuff I want to talk to you guys with, and now that I broke the ice and made myself laugh, which is actually kind of funny, it will take some of the seriousness away from a very important topic that I want to discuss. Now, obviously, when I do my live shows, I do them at the spur of the moment. I do them when something comes to my mind that's important. So this is one of those videos that part of it is going to be for people who live in the United States corporation. It's going to be one of the more important things. I've discussed this, but it's been over a year ago, and I've gotten probably 10,000 subscribers since then. The other one is relevant for pretty much everybody in the world that has any form of government identification, government ID. So this is going to be important. So I do ask, one, don't base what you're about to hear on your belief system. Base it on research and following up on what I'm about to say, because this is important. There's a huge difference in a person's life when they go from believing to knowing. So when I give this information, I want you to look it up yourself. Take the time and the effort. If people can't take the time and effort to look up things, they are always going to end up being taken advantage of and misled, because the people who control our lives, and obviously that's not conspiracy or paranoia, because we don't have the free will to do whatever we want. So there are authorities that control our lives in some shape or form. So the more you research, the better off you're going to be. So I am going to ask people to share this information because it is going to be relevant. So the first thing we're going to talk about is people that live in the United States corporation. Now, I see on so many shows and I see so many videos where the media is talking about things that we don't like, as far as the way the government creates laws that many people don't agree with, the way they can make laws that they can not only have unfair, but they don't necessarily get punished for not doing themselves. It's the do as I say, not as I do mentality, where they're above the laws that they create. You know, my thing is, if they're going to make an illegal law, they should be punished for what they do as well, but that doesn't happen because you don't punish the people in your own gang. So, how do we avoid these situations? How do we control them? Well, the biggest thing is knowledge. You know, they say only the strongest shall survive. That's not true. I mean, they will survive, but the smartest will survive as well. So being full of wisdom is something that they don't want. They don't want you smart. They want you smart enough to do what you're told, but never smart enough to question why. It's like training a monkey or a dog to do a trick. They may be smart enough to figure out what to do and basically repeat what you are doing, but they'll never understand why. So, how do we stop federal government? How do we stop FBI? How do we stop CIA? How do we stop judges? How do we stop all of these politicians, mayors, senators, etc., from passing laws that we don't agree with? Now, I'm not talking about just minor nitpicking things. I'm talking about illegal things, things that are opposite of what our Constitution is supposed to be about. Well, this is something I want you to Google and research. You may or may not be aware of this, and by the fact that nothing has really changed, it shows that majority of people don't, which is because the schools don't teach you this. The politicians will never speak it. The media will never do a story on it. And the people in question will never acknowledge it on their own free will. And the fact is, your local sheriff in your jurisdiction has the highest authority in the land. Your local sheriff, whether they know it or don't know it, because they get paid lots of money to not know their true power, or at least use it. so I'd be surprised if some of them even know this fact, is they have the highest authority in the land of the United States of America Corporation. They are higher than a judge. They have higher authority than an FBI agent. They have higher authority than the president, because the president is just a president of a corporation that's located in Washington, D.C. That's its own country, owned by the Bank of London. Another thing you should be looking up. So a local sheriff in his jurisdiction, now that means the area that he was elected in. So a sheriff in some county in Texas cannot tell an FBI agent in California what to do. It can only be in his jurisdiction. Now the sheriff, a local sheriff, is voted in by the people. You can relieve him of his duties. You can, if the people in that town or district or whatever went to their local sheriffs and said, you have to have masses to do this, because you can take away his authority. You can remove him from being sheriff right there. Because you tell your local sheriffs to do their job, or they will lose their job, because they are elected officials by we the people. And if you look at the biggest government document here, it starts out with we the people. And we've been conditioned to believe that we have no authority, as a certain South Park character would say. And we believe we have no say, we have no abilities. And they keep us down with fear. And it works. And who they can't scare, they distract. So you'll see plenty of posts about the Kardashians and the latest gossip, and you'll definitely be encouraged to learn as many sports figure numbers as you can. You'll be rewarded for your knowledge of unimportant things. They want you to drink and party and have a great time. You know, like a song said a couple years ago, you know, dance until the world ends. So they love the people to be distracted, to be scared, to be uneducated. Now, if you Google, sheriffs have the highest authority in the land, they have to do a little scrolling, because Wikipedia, you know, you don't trust sites like that. But there'll be several sites that'll point out this truth. I'm not asking you to believe what I say. I'm asking you to research it, see it for yourself. Because like they say, seeing is believing, but actually it's actually knowing when it comes to things like that. Because not everything you see is believable. That's why if you still watch the television, they're going to give you plenty of stories and plenty of entertainment called news. Because if you actually look at the news media, how they categorize themselves, they're listed as entertainment. If you like that kind of entertainment, keep watching it. So let's put it this way. When this country was founded, it was founded by the people that settled this land. Well, after we murdered millions of Indians, because our country seems to forget this proud fact of theirs, that they betrayed the people that lived here. Because remember, didn't Columbus, quote unquote, discover America? Another lie that you're told? Well, how do you discover something that's been occupied for thousands of years? Kind of silly if you think about that. And when they talk about things like the Orlando shooting as the biggest massacre in U.S. history, they seem to forget that our own government, who signed treaties with the American Indians, who lived here thousands of years before we even knew it existed, supposedly, we betrayed those treaties and murdered them by the millions, to the point where I highly doubt you see 2 Native American Indians walking by on a daily basis, monthly basis, yearly basis. They seem to forget those things, and they don't really teach that, do they? Again, people say when you talk about how governments and politicians and media, they don't speak the truth. When I point out facts like this, can somebody please dispute it? Can you show me any news media outlet that has done a story on our betrayal of the Native American Indians and how we slaughtered them by the millions? Any politician talk about that? They might briefly mention it for a second, but they won't get into detail to educate people. So I don't want you to believe or automatically dismiss it. That's silly. That's what they want. They want you to automatically dismiss something based on the fact that it sounds strange or different than what you've been programmed to think. So instead of you actually getting up and researching it, you'll just dismiss it. So what I would encourage you to do is, let's say some of the people that are listening are doubters or haters. Look up about your local sheriff and prove me wrong. Now, don't quote the Wikipedia, which will be on the top of that list. I want you to read several articles that talk about this fact. Research it. And if you could prove me wrong, I will publicly admit that I was wrong. So you'll have the satisfaction of saying, oh, I don't like this person. I got to get him to admit he was wrong. But here's the beautiful thing. I won't have to worry about that day coming, because once you research it and you find it out, you'll know that what I say is true. And I'm here to try and help the people. And like this says, the truth is the truth, no matter what you believe. Okay, so once we the people get that information out, because once you take the time, if you decide today's the day I'm actually going to go from just listening and not participating to actually participating, which is what we need, because our forefathers, they didn't sit down and hope that other people would join in. They actually fought the good fight for us so we can have the freedoms that we're supposed to have, which we don't really have. Where's your freedoms? Try and leave this country with everything you own without a piece of paper that says passport on it, and watch how quick you get stopped. You don't have the freedoms you think you do. You have the freedoms that they tell you you have. That's why when you vote for a president, you have a Republican and a Democrat. That's it. They kind of like let a little third party come in, but they're pretty much irrelevant. That's how they treat them. That's why you don't see any third party presidents. They make you feel like, oh, they have a chance. But if it was really freedom, wouldn't it be anybody? You ever notice all presidents are extremely wealthy? You ever see a person that's homeless decide to run for president, make it all the way to the top, and become our president? Just because a person's homeless doesn't mean they're not smart or wise or have the capability, because you never know the reason why they became homeless. Maybe it's because our governments only really help the wealthy, and that's probably why in America alone there are over 33, probably a lot more, million people on a social welfare program. It's easy to get their votes when you give them a bunch of free things, so they take advantage of you. We have to stop letting them take advantage of us. And it comes down to the fact, are people willing to do the effort to make change, or do they just like complaining? They're hoping that 100% of you listening to this right now, because it's not going to go viral. Most people are not going to share this video. Most people are not even going to hit the like button. So they're counting on you to give up automatically, to dismiss it, to not do anything. Or even if you do, just keep it to yourself and say, oh, that's cool. I learned a new fact. But until we, the people, decide to non-violently take back what is rightfully ours, things are not going to change. But you have to know how to do it. And they're counting on our ignorance and naivety and our trust in the people that corrupt us. And I will challenge anyone out there that thinks this is all conspiracy theory, crazy, paranoid stuff, is to mention 5 politicians, whether they are mayors, senators, governors, presidents, anything, anyone in this government. Throughout the last 50 years, point out 5 politicians that you can name that were people of honor, integrity, kept their word, and kept their promises. It's going to be hard for you to think of 2, let alone 5. And even if you could pick 5, you'd have a struggle, and it would probably have to do a lot of research. How many hundreds of thousands of politicians are there? Not good odds. We joke, comedians joke about how dishonest politicians are. Politicians get arrested all the time. They get caught in scandals. They always admit they're wrong once they get caught. Anybody can do that. But yet we keep putting our trust in them, and we keep believing the words that they say. And we believe the media when they don't investigate. They just regurgitate. You ever notice no matter what channel you go on, when there's a topic they want you to know about, it's pretty much always the same thing? That's propaganda. And most people don't want to hear this. That's why I'm not going to have 20,000 people viewing this right now. I'm going to have the 17. And the 17 that are watching right now, I'm very proud that you're taking the time, because it shows that you're the minority that cares. Oh, -1. Must have been one of my old comic book haters. So that's number one. Number one is your local sheriff in your own jurisdiction has the highest authority in the land. You could tell a sheriff to go, you could tell an FBI agent to screw off. You could counteract a judge's illegal decision, Supreme Court's illegal decision, and you could tell a president, get the hell off my property. There have been examples of this. If you look at my videos a year ago about sheriffs, you will see where it came from and how it actually worked when people actually told their local sheriff what to do. The local sheriff told the FBI to get off their property. And the FBI had machine guns, they had the military gear, all that scary stuff that intimidates most people. And the local sheriff and the people stood by. And not a single gunshot was fired. The FBI left. Now what they're counting on is for people to forget this truth and not spread it. That's why you probably haven't even heard of this. And this was over a year ago. Like I said, go back on my videos, type in sheriff, and you'll see it a year and a half ago, and you'll see a couple of videos that explain the situation, and you could research it from there. I'm not going to tell you more than just research the sheriff part, because I don't want you to just think my job is to tell you everything and you just listen and go. There's a difference between believing and knowing. You have to start learning. You have to start knowing. The time of belief has to end. It's the time of the knowing. It's the time of the action. Because just imagine if our forefathers did not fight the oppression and start this country, where we would be right now. They weren't sitting around hoping that other people would do the work. They sacrificed. And unfortunately, corruption will take over time because we get complacent, we get lazy. And they use convenience to trap us. They use technology to enslave us in a way. Because if you actually read the 13th Amendment, like I said, I've said numerous times, that the 13th Amendment legally defines slavery as involuntary servitude, which means they can't put a gun to your head and make you do something. But if you do it on your own, you're volunteering your servitude, which means the 13th Amendment, that the way it was worded, does not protect you. But the average person doesn't know that. Any politician will never explain that. The schools definitely will never explain that. Shouldn't people be asking why? Okay, so that's fact number one. Whether you check it or not, that's up to you. Second one, I've heard so many people talk about, we got to fight them in the courts, we got to do this, we got to do that. Here's the thing about the courts, why it will never be in your favor. You could know a lot about admiralty law, you could know a little bit here and there. But if you don't know how the game is rigged, you will never win. It's like going to a casino where the dealer is rigging the cards. If you continue to play on that rigged table, you can complain all you want. You're not going to win. You can call over the manager. You think he's going to stop? He probably hired the person to do it. You're going to call the owner of that casino and complain? You think they care about your couple of $100 when they're making millions off of the people? So if you find out that that dealer is cheating, and you call over the manager and they say, we'll talk about him, we'll discuss it, we'll do our research, we'll get a committee. Sound familiar in government? And still nothing happens, and they're still cheating, and you know this fact. Well, if you continue to keep playing their game, a fool and their money is soon parted. It's your fault. I don't care how much you love playing whatever game you're playing. You can always play somewhere else or not play at all. If you choose to play the game, don't complain. The idea is to walk away. So, when it comes to the court system scam, this is something no lawyer will ever tell you. No politician will ever teach you. Neither will the schools. Media definitely not into giving you truthful information. They're there to read cards and tell you what they're programmed to tell you. That's propaganda. Well, Here's the little secret about the court system. It's your name. Now, if you've seen my other videos, whether you believe or not, and again, if you automatically dismiss it, you're only hurting yourself and your family and your future. So, by all means, please research it unless you like that. Is the fact that when you are born, they extract DNA from your bottom of your foot, your sole of your foot. They extract blood. Now, why would you think they do that? Well, in your blood is your DNA. Your DNA is your own personal digital code to who you are, and there are no two DNA strands alike. And when your parents sign their not live certificate of birth, you sign a birth certificate. They are two different things. It originates from the term birth, B-E-A-R-T-H, from Admiralty law when ships would bring products into the port where they would dock. That's why you have a doctor in a delivery room. Another word for delivery room is shipment. Ship from a boat. It comes from Admiralty law. It comes from the terms. I know these things sound crazy, and they may be the first time you've ever heard these things. But just because something's crazy does not mean it's not true. Just like they say, truth is stranger than fiction. Mark Twain once said the reason he liked writing fiction so much is it didn't have to make sense. Now, something to that extent. Look up Mark Twain's quote. Might have got that wrong. So when your parents sign this, not certificate of live birth, but birth certificate, there is a difference. They are basically giving the rights to you away. Silly as that sounds. They let you keep the baby because you get to spend all your money in your lifetime and going broke, feeding, clothing, educating that child. So they let you raise them, but they tax you. They take all of your money. So they profit off of how long you live. And if they can't profit off of you from your production, well, they'll make so many laws that make it so hard to not end up in jail that if you actually read the 13th Amendment, it doesn't protect people in prison. They make lots of free labor off of the prisoners. That's why prisoners will make, what, $1 a week? They don't even have to pay you anything. They just do it so people don't complain. Because if enough people complain, they actually create an action, and that action can create change. They don't want that. Look up your prisons. One of the biggest corporate moneymakers in your local areas. The people that own prisons make a hell of a lot of money off of the people. And people say, oh yeah, it creates jobs. It sure does for a few, but they make millions while you make a couple of thousand. They don't mind giving away a couple of thousand if they make millions and billions. You know, just imagine if you were a millionaire and somebody asked for a nickel. Okay, here you go. Here's 10 of them. Go crazy. So, when people learn the fact that, now, why would they take your DNA? Well, this is what you have to understand. Your DNA is your own digital code. It's different than anything else in our supposed known universe. No one else has your digital DNA code. So, when they extract the DNA from you, they are in essence taking the proof of who you are. It's like, for example, and I've used this before, if you go and get your hair cut and your hair falls down to the ground, you like your haircut when it's done, you pay, you leave. All that hair is still on the ground. You've abandoned your property even though that was once a part of you. Now, those people that work at that store, that haircutting facility, can gather up all the hair and turn around and sell it, make wigs out of it. They could turn around and sell it. So even though that was a part of you, in law, when you leave something behind and don't claim it, it's considered abandoned property. That doesn't just happen with cars, baseball cards, comic books, and houses. It has to do with anything. So if those people take your hair that you left and abandoned and turn around and sell it, well, you can't complain and say, well, hey, wait a minute, that's my hair. But you abandoned it. So it's no longer yours. So when they extract the DNA from your infant foot when you are first born, they are extracting your DNA, which is proof of who you are. And they take a legal claim of it. And because nobody, and please correct me if I'm wrong, nobody has gone to claim their DNA. Why? Because you're not told about it. How do you claim something you're not knowing? So your governments don't teach you this. Your media will never teach you this. Your schools will never teach you this. So you never claim it. So how do you prove who you are? What do? Show some government ID? Well, can ID be, faked? What about your signature? Somebody can't copy your signature? How do you prove you are who you say you are? You can't. The only thing that could prove who you are is your DNA. And since it was abandoned, they claimed ownership of it. Just like if your hair fell down at the salon and you left it there. So they own the proof of who you are. Now, how is that relevant? Well, when you get a government ID or anything from the government that has your name on it, you assume that that name on your ID is you. Well, what they do is they make a corporation account with your DNA as proof of ownership that they own you. Well, they own the name. Because when they sign that birth certificate and write your child's name, it's not a certificate of live birth. So they're basically giving this signed paperwork that's signing over the rights of ownership to you. And they take your name. So let's say your name is John Smith. They send you back a birth certificate, which is nothing more than a sales receipt. That's why you notice a birth certificate is on the same receipt as like a car transaction. You ever notice that? It's a registration. That's why you have a social security number. It's just like a registration number on the back of a DVD player. It's the same thing. It's registered. You're a registered trademark. And if your name is John Smith, you get a birth certificate back that says John Smith. Now you'll say, what a coincidence. That's the same name as I was called by my parents. Well, if you know anything about corporations, and I've taught about this, the corporation is nothing more than the registered name. So it's not a building. It's not an actual physical thing. The corporation for 7-Eleven is just the number 7, the dash, and the number 11. That's the corporation. What you build from that is just a result of you paying to register the name. It's no different than your birth certificate, your driver's license, any of your government-issued identification, military or not. So, the name is the fraud. So, when people go to court and they call your name and you acknowledge that fact and you don't understand that the government owns the rights to your name because your parents abandoned your DNA and no one ever told you about it, you're committing fraud against yourself without even knowing it. And like they say, ignorance of the law is no excuse. So again, this is going to sound incredibly crazy, but that will also keep people from ever searching it out. And if you don't search it out, you don't realize the truth, you do nothing about it, the control lasts. You ever wonder why people say things like, oh, well, if this was the truth, people would know about it? Well, show me one radio station, one television station, one politician, one school that taught about this that wasn't executed or disappeared or went crazy or went to jail or had some information placed into their computers to make them be a pedophile or a crazy person or something like that. So when we, the people, decide it's time to understand or understand how law really works, you understand that every time you use your government ID, you're basically committing identity theft. Because although you believe that to be you, and again, belief is different from knowledge, they are scamming people and committing fraud against you by you using a name that you don't own. You think you do because you've been called it all your life. But they own your DNA. You abandoned it. Now here's the thing, if you know about law, there's a thing called full disclosure, which they did not give. So if people want to fight it in I believe a world court, or just, I don't know how you could fight it, because if you go to court, you have to acknowledge your name. But I think it has to take the masses to do it. So I don't have the exact solution. I wish I did. But They didn't give you full disclosure. In other words, the doctor didn't say to you, because they don't know, but let's assume they knew. And they said to your parents, let's say you just had a newborn baby in the hospital. And the doctor hands you a piece of paper that says certificate of live birth or birth certificate, whichever one. I haven't had a child, so I don't know. And they say to you, okay, just want to let you know that before you sign this, what's going to happen is we're going to extract blood from the bottom of your baby's foot, the sole of his foot or her foot. In that blood is going to be DNA. Now, DNA is exclusive to each individual person. There are no two strands alike in the known universe. So when we take that, we're actually taking proof of your child's existence. You'll get a bunch of fake IDs or anything that we give. That could be switched, that could be manipulated, could be forged. But we'll have the DNA which proves who they are. And what we're going to do with that information is once you leave, after a certain amount of time, it's going to be considered abandoned, which means you no longer own it. We take over the rights to it. And we're going to make a dummy corporation under your child's name, John Smith, which we're going to tax them, we're going to bill them, and we're going to make them think that property can be owned by anyone. And we're going to charge you fees, so your child will be in debt for all its life, and it will have to continually work to benefit us, the majority, the minority, the mass, the wealthy. So you could pay back debts where we only create the principal amount of money, but never the interest. So you'll always have to continually work. And as we print more and more money, you're going to be less and less able to fill it. So your child will be a slave in the system for his or her entire life. Please sign here. How many parents would say, oh, that sounds great, let's sign? Probably wouldn't. So, but for the fact they did not disclose the information, you would have never signed it with your own free will. And because of the 13th Amendment's involuntary servitude, they can't put a gun to your head and make you do it, because that would mean that they are believing in slavery. Wonder if anybody's ever brought that up in court. Now, obviously, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't go to court because I don't cause any problems. Last time I was in court was probably about 10 years ago fighting a traffic ticket. Way before I knew all this stuff. So your name is the fraud. So if you go to the court and they say, John Smith, please approach the bench, and you approach the bench, you don't know that you don't own that name. They do. They're not going to tell you. Their job's to extract money from you. Now, I don't know how the court systems work in all other places in the world, but I do know identification is the way to fraud people. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure every child around the world, they take blood from the person. They'll give you a good excuse. They'll give you a good reason, something that'll make sense. Because there's always a way to make sense, just like when they talked about Area 51, that all the ship that they supposedly saw crash was just an air balloon. They can make something sound plausible. Now, I don't know because I wasn't there, but they can always tell you, oh, it's toxic gases or smoke behind the mirror or pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. So if the people want to start change, they have to start having themselves armed with the right things, not with weapons, but with knowledge. So we could change the world without pulling a trigger once we understand this, because when you look at your birth certificate, you see your name. When you look at your driver's license, you see your name. You don't own that name. And remember, like I said, a corporation is nothing more than a name. So it's not when they say they own you. Technically they do, because you're working. And whether you love your job or not, I guarantee you, if you had the free will of how religions teach you, where people were just placed on the earth free to do whatever they want, I guarantee you'd be somewhere else right now, or later on, than working, even if it's a job you love. You're doing it because you have to. Why? Because you have to make money to pay bills. They create the quote-unquote money by creating the principal amount. You borrow, many people borrow because they use credit cards, they take out loans, and what happens is they only print the principal amount. So you're always having to pay and pay and pay and never completely finish paying. That's why every country is in debt. Because let's say there's $1 trillion in existence. Well, when you add interest, it's probably $1.5 trillion. But if they only created $1 trillion, where do you get the other half $1 trillion? Is by creating more money. And that creates a higher interest, and the Ponzi scheme goes higher and higher. Now, what happens is eventually it can only go so high before things become too expensive. It's not that things become too expensive. It's because of the fact that they overprint it, devalues the currency, and you need more of it to make the same purchase. That's why they say 1 ounce of gold back in the days when it was $35 an ounce would buy you a very fancy suit. Well, one gold ounce coin today will still buy that same very fancy suit, even though the price has gone up tremendously. It's because the price of gold kept up with the inflation. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio, but they don't want people to know these facts. They want you to think people like me are the crazy ones or the silly ones, so we don't know what I'm talking about. And if you want to base on a belief system without even proving me right or wrong, well, you're only hurting yourself, your family, and your future. And obviously there are plenty of people complaining about how unfair this world is. It's time we start doing something. If we keep waiting for other people to do it, guess what? It ain't going to happen. Because it's we the people, not, hey, one person. Otherwise, people just like to complain. And we got a little question or statement right here. And you can ask questions. All you have to do is go to my Google page. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you go to my Google account, if you follow me there, there's a link. You'll see the live broadcast. If you click on it, you can actually ask questions. So Russell Hall, and I'm glad you're watching this, says, I tried this type your birth certificate number to the stock market. Your name and corporation is in the index of the stock market. That's exactly correct. You're part of the stock exchange. You don't know it because you're not told it. And when you don't get told something, when you hear it for the first time, you're automatically to dismiss it and say it's crazy. That's what they're counting on. And people will say, oh, well, if this is true, this would be said all the time. Well, it is said all the time, but it's not said by the masses, so you don't spread it. And they intimidate you or scare you by having people come and gang up on you to give you false threats and make you think that their threats are real, and you'll go away. Like, for example, I've talked about the Act of 1871. Well, that was a law that was created in 1871. How many people know about it in 2016? Look how many days, weeks, months, and years, decades and centuries have gone by, and the masses still don't know it. Now keep in mind, when it comes to a law is in effect no matter how long ago it was until it's repealed. You ever wonder why we used to have a constitution. Our country went bankrupt in 1933. That's the year they confiscated gold, and all of a sudden people had social security numbers as a law. What a coincidence. Your collateral. Your birth certificate confirms this. And if you ever learn about canon law, which is the highest law based on the Vatican, there's a thing called right of usage, which means nobody can own anything. So one of the biggest scams governments make you think is they own the land and they can tax you on it. Well, if you know about canon law, which supersedes every law, even admiralty law, it tells you the right of usage means you don't own anything, because when you die, you can't take it with you. But you can give it to someone else. But when they die, they can't take it with them, so they can give it to somebody else, and so on and so forth. So governments and banks give you this thing, for example, called a mortgage, which is a death pledge. Mortgage. Just like when you die, you go to a mortician in a morgue, at a mortuary. It's in the name. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? But that's the ingeniousness of their plan. Is they've gotten people to think that's so ridiculous that it can't be true. So to the point that they don't even want to prove it wrong, because when they find the truth out, they'll realize, holy crap, my life is a lie. No one wants to hear that. That's why when you first awaken from this, and I remember back in the days, it'll confuse the hell out of you, it'll frustrate the hell out of you, it'll anger the hell out of you, it'll confuse the hell out of you. And you don't know what to do in the beginning, because you've thrown all this information from all these different places, you don't know what's true. It'll make you go crazy. And most people don't want that. They want to have their nice little dream. That's the American dream, because like a famous comedian once said, the American dream, because you have to be asleep to dream it, to have reality, have it. I don't know the exact quote. But the name is the fraud. So if you look at the back of your birth certificate, it says, do not use the certificate for any ID. And yet when you go to get a driver's license, which is regulated by the government, What's the first thing you have to do? You have to present your birth certificate, because it's at that time, it's your only ID. So you're volunteering your servitude, because no one at the Department of Motor Vehicles puts a gun to your head and says you have to check anything or do this. You're doing it on your own free will. So it contradicts the 13th Amendment. And they know people are not wise enough to know this. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. And when you go to register to vote, or even with your driver's license, what's one of the first things they ask? Are you a U.S. citizen? Well, I've given in plenty of examples of the legal term of citizen and person, which are in law legally defined as corporations. What a coincidence. So you volunteer your own servitude, which negates the 13th Amendment. You are causing yourself fraud by using a name you don't own. And they tax you and make you think that things like mortgages and taxes are real, because they make you think they own the land that you're on. They don't own the land, they own the title. The title is nothing more than a piece of paper. So when they give you a title, you're spending, let's say your house was $300,000. You pay it in cash. You spend $300,000 on a piece of paper that has the address and location of your home with your name on it that you don't own. So congratulations, you spent $300 on a piece of paper. If the American people and the people around the world knew that mortgages were a fraud and you're paying for nothing because they don't have the legal right to own it, no one would ever pay a mortgage again. And what are they going to do? Arrest everyone? You're not doing anything wrong. You're just obeying their fraud. You're complying. You're not contesting. That's on you. Call me crazy all you want. Keep getting billed for things from people that don't own the very property that they claim to. You believe it because you've been told it. Tell a lie long enough, it becomes the truth. So we got a couple of questions, and I'm glad people are starting to ask them, because questions is always a good thing. Let's see. This is Eddie B83. I like that one. Very good name. Thank you for watching. He says, how do our parents sign us away with a forged name? By the way, I've known this topic for a bit. Well, it's not a forged name at the time. If they want to name their child John or Joan Smith, they're signing a piece of paper that they don't understand what it is. You know, you ever have a lawyer tell you don't sign something without reading it? That's why you hire a lawyer. You ever see a baseball or football player ever sign a contract? No. They have lawyers do it. They read the fine print because they have to understand each word. Because if you don't know what you're signing, you could do a lot of bad things. And if you don't know that you signed something that gives your rights away, like if you just signed a piece of paper that says you give over the power of authority to someone else, and they own your rights, well, if you don't contest it because you don't know about it, well, it becomes legal. So it's not forged at the time. It's a regular name. The parents are what's called drowning in good intention. They're doing what they're told because and they do it without question. And they do it without research. Just somebody says, here, sign this piece of paper. And they go, okay. And when they do that and don't understand what they read, they didn't have legal representation. And even if they did, they wouldn't tell you, because they probably don't know. Most lawyers probably don't know this stuff. That you sign the rights of ownership of that name, not the person. You go home with the person. They just take the name and register it as a corporation. And they can back it up by saying, look, we have DNA that proves we own that. What do you have? What are you going to do? Pull out your DNA? Well, it just matches what they have. And they say, well, the government has it. You're just showing us now? What are you going to do? Pull out a driver's license? How do we know that's not forged? You can't prove who you are. And they own the only proof that does. And they don't tell your parents that, which legally speaking is your loophole. They did not give full disclosure. But it would have to be the masses that actually point this out. Because you can call a radio station, you could call a TV station, they'll laugh you off. They won't ever mention this stuff because it sounds crazy, and they'll never research it, even if they did find out it was true, because they get paid not to. You ever see a poor person work the media? It's always very wealthy people. They make a lot of money look the other way while we stay poor. Do you like being poor? Do you like having to work nonstop so you can keep paying bills? They love to give you free credit. They love to give you free things. Here's a little carrot, little donkey. And they want you to attack people like me. They want you to make fun of people like me and dismiss people like me and many others that are trying to just save not only themselves, but the world. But if you want to keep watching your Super Bowl games, you want to keep watching the latest gossip and believing all this nonsense in the news, you have that right. That's free will. But don't complain if you don't want to do anything. So I'm glad, Eddie, you know about that. And okay, he's asking another part. He says, I'm saying the parents' names are forged names as well from their parents. Exactly. But they don't know it. If, for example, let's say you're a hoarder and you have millions of things in your house. Let's say they're all valuable things. And one of the things that you have scattered in your house is an original Babe Ruth baseball card. You've had so many things for so long, you don't even know where it is. Haven't thought about it in a long time. Somebody breaks into your house and finds your Babe Ruth baseball card, takes it and leaves. You don't know it's gone. There's no indication that there's a break-in. You didn't know it was gone. You're not looking for it because you haven't thought about it in years. Are you going to report that's being stolen? Of course not. Why? Because you didn't know. So if you don't know that that Babe Ruth card was stolen, and you don't care to look for it, you don't place it in a place that is responsible enough for you to realize where it is, and it's gone, well, you'll never know, and you can't do anything about it, or won't do anything about it. That's what they're counting on. So the parents, and your parents before them, and your parents before them, anybody in the world that has a government-issued ID has a piece of paper that has a corporate registered name that is now trademarked and owned by the very governments you pay taxes to, and you pledge allegiance to, and you send your women and children over to die for in military. Because you are going to what's called the United States, or whatever country you live in, Canada, Brazil, Mexico, Afghanistan, China, Russia, Poland, you name it. If there's a government-issued ID, you are part of the fraud. This is a world event. You have to lose the fear. I've been talking about this for years. Yeah, I get some trolls. But only free will based on belief systems can get you to believe that bad things will happen to you. If you want to believe that, you're creating that truth. Lose the fear, because fear is a choice. You can choose not to feel it. And I've been talking about this stuff, like I said, since 2011 on my old channel. Didn't know as much back then. It makes you paranoid, makes you crazy at times. It does take, this is a hard pill to swallow. All right, and here's another one, Russell Hall. And it's good to see there are some very wise people out there. And this is another fact. Russell Hall says, most people don't know about what happened at Jekyll Island in 1916, where the elite conspired about the Federal Reserve. That is exactly true. And from what I researched, I believe, didn't the Titanic sink in 1916? You know what? Let me just Google that just to confirm, because I don't want to just assume. So give me a second. And this is what I'm talking about. Okay, what year did the Titanic sink? Okay, it was 1912. Okay, so I was wrong about that. All right, so I'm not going to use that example. Okay, but 1916, the elitists, the owners of the banks, the J.P. Morgans, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, people of that nature, they wanted to find a way to be able to tax the people. So they created the Federal Reserve. It's a Federal Reserve note. The banks are there to bankrupt people. Bankrupt. Did you know that President Andrew Jackson was on record on his deathbed, and they asked him, what was your greatest achievement? And his last words on earth before he passed away was, I killed the banks. They knew way back when how banks would control the world, and they fought hard and succeeded until 1916, when the Federal Reserve opened and enslaved not only America, but the world. Because don't we lend out trillions of dollars to other countries? When you lend money, you have to pay it in interest. Now, back in the days of the Romans, what would happen is once the debt got to a certain degree where it was just unplausibly payable, they would just stop it and start all over again. So everybody's debt would be forgiven. It would reach a certain peak where they're like, listen, it's not payable at this point. If we continue, people are going to revolt and murder us. So to stop that from happening, let's just forgive the debt and we'll start over again. So just imagine all of your loans were forgiven and you don't have to pay a thing. You'd be pretty darn happy, wouldn't you? Which is what would make this ruling class even more ingenious is if actually, since they could print money out of thin air because it's not backed by anything, there is no fiscal responsibility. Just imagine if every government on the planet gave everyone $1 million. You think anybody'd argue anymore? You think anybody'd fight? You think anybody'd complain? You think anybody would want to be taken away and not led by those people? Maybe they want to be caught. It's almost like people cheating to the point where they do it so much and it becomes so risque that it's almost like they want to be caught. Because they're treating us, they're stealing from us more and more. They're hurting us more and more to the point we're getting angry, and eventually people will react. People right now, they're still complacent. They're getting their free things. Once those free things are no longer presented to them, because when they realize it's not really there and they're not giving you anything but numbers, people will always revolt and rebel. And lots of people will die, and it's unfortunate. It doesn't have to be that way. But yeah, the Federal Reserve opened in 1916 by the bankers, the very bankers that we bailed out in 2008 when we became a socialist fascist nation. Because if you look up socialism, it's the merger of corporate and state. Yet the American people will cheer on. They will blissfully cheer through their ignorance. They volunteer their servitude. But they'll sure complain. Now, let's get to the next question. Eddie B83 says, have you ever heard of the blood over intent ritual? I haven't, but I would have to look into it. It says, by the way, I uploaded a video of me calling Social Security and telling them I wanted to opt out. They said I couldn't. Well, you can't just say it because you don't own your name, so you have no legal authority. That's why in court, they can actually dismiss something you said, stricken it from the record, because basically when you go to court, well, let me read the rest of this. They said that I couldn't. Maybe we could truth bomb billboards with information about our slavery. Yeah, you sure could. The more effort you put in, the more truth gets out. So that's limited to your imagination. So if you have money to put this stuff on a billboard, the people that rent the billboards don't care what it says, as long as it's not something about murder or something illegal. If you're just saying, here's some truth, Google the act. If somebody got rented billboards that said, Google the Act of 1871, that would help awaken a lot of people. But because of the fact of admiralty law, which is law of the sea, which supersedes law of the land, but does not supersede canon law, which is the almighty authority, because it's supposedly based on the word of God. Which God that is, I don't know, because God is not a name, it's a title. When you go to court, it's based on admiralty law. That's why you will see in every court and government they're building the American flag with a gold fringe around it. It was not created with a gold fringe. That is a military flag. That is a flag of wartime. That is flies under admiralty law, which is law of the sea. But because you don't know that, you think it's just a pretty decoration. That's why when you drive by your local restaurants and you see an American flag waving, you don't see that gold fringe. It's not supposed to be there. But again, ignorance of law is no excuse. So when you go into a court, when you go through that gate, you are figuratively walking onto a ship. And you are a piece of property because you don't own the rights to your name. If you're wealthy enough, you could buy those rights. I don't think you have that kind of money, do you? Probably wouldn't be watching this if you did. Because we're talking in the millions, not the hundreds of thousands. So you might have a couple of 100,000 in your bank account. Won't help you one bit. Need millions. It's an elite game. And they make billions off of your lifetime, of every bill, everything you've borrowed, every fee you've had to pay, every mortgage. When you're born and they have your DNA and create a right, they build a trust in your name. They prepaid everything you will ever do in your life. Now you think, why would they do that? Well, because you don't know it, and you pay taxes and interest, and pay fees with interest, and borrow things with interest. It accrues interest over time, so that 1 or 2 million or whatever amount that they put into your trust when you're born, they get 10, 20, 50 times that amount, depending on how successful their particular slave that they own becomes. So they prepaid everything in your life. And I've used this example. Let's say you and your friend are in separate cars and you get to a toll booth. The toll booth says $10. So your friend is in front of you, you're right behind them. Your friend goes to the toll booth guy and says, okay, here's my $10. Here's another 10. I'm going to pay for the car behind me. And the toll booth guy says, okay, no problem. And you drive through the toll. Now, you, the person behind that, your friend, did not know that he paid for your toll. And the toll booth guy knows this as well. So he pockets the other 10. So when you pull up to the toll booth guy goes, $10, please. And you pay it because that's what you're supposed to do. But you did not know that your friend paid for you. And the toll booth person decided not to tell you either. So you paid twice. So congratulations. Your mortgage, your credit card bills, your light bills, your energy bills, your cable bills, all those things, it's already been prepaid. You're paying for it twice. But nobody knows this, and most people say it's crazy. They won't check into it. So if you like giving your money away, by all means, please do. It's your right. That's free will. You're volunteering your servitude. You're falling right into their trap. Congratulations. But please, by all means, be mad at me. Because how many people do you know are going to speak about these things and speak in it in ways that people can hopefully comprehend? And as by some of the questions here, people actually are getting it. But we need to do something about it. We need to spread the word. We need to get the information out there. It's limited to your imagination. You might not be able to afford a billboard sign. You have a printer? Type a couple of words, put them on pieces of paper, print them out, go to your local library, your local stores, your local governments, your local post office, all these different places, supermarkets, dance clubs, distribute the pieces of paper. You live in a major city, you see people handing stuff out about strip clubs, hand out stuff about truth. You're limited to your imagination. My power is through my word and through my voice. And you can see at this point, over 32 people are listening right now, which is very humbling. 33. So welcome and thank you for those that are watching. This is truth you will never hear on the radio, never see on the TV, never hear in school, and you'll definitely never have your politicians tell you, because then they won't make money anymore off of your ignorance. You can't fight it by yourself. You could take one twig and break it easily. Take a couple of hundred of those same tiny little twigs and wrap them all together. Good luck trying to break those. Why do you think they say, united we stand, divided we fall? Why do you think there's so much divide and conquer? Gay versus straight, male versus female, black versus white, Democrat versus Republican, religion versus religion, town versus town, sports team versus sports team, country versus country. They got you fighting all over the place, because while you're fighting each other, and on YouTube, for example, I'll get all this hate. I mean, I left the comic book channel because I was tired of, it wasn't trolls that got me. So any trolls that think they got me, they're sadly mistaken, because I've been dealing with trolls since 2010. I'm still here. It was my friends people I thought were my friends that continually backstabbed me, that I thought, this is comics. I'm trying to help people. They want to be that childish. This is just not a battle I want to fight. And I come back here to where it's more important. People have to realize that they have to make the effort. You can complain all you want if somebody's punching you. You can hold up a picket sign saying how unfair it is. But if you don't do anything about it, you're going to continually get punched. And that's your freedom of choice. Your politicians are saying to you, would you like to punch you in the face with my left hand or my right hand? You choose. There's your freedom of choice. You're not going to like either one of them. Why do you think, despite Republicans telling you what you want to hear and Democrats telling you what you want to hear, ultimately when they get elected, they never give you what they promise? They never do what they say. And it seems to get worse, not better. Please explain one president that has made this country better. Has Obama made this country better? And people say, oh, what do you, don't like a black president? Well, let me explain that. How about George Bush? Did he make this country better? He's white, so I guess it's not a black or white thing. But if you want to make it that, that's another divide and conquer. You can make people hate each other off of color. That's why people don't understand what the real battle was about the Civil War. It wasn't about slavery, although slavery was a part of it. It had to do with illegal taxation that a certain part of the country didn't want to pay anymore. You have to learn your facts. Just like if you learn in school, they'll teach you that George Washington is the first president of the United States. That is inaccurate. Google who was the real first president of the United States. It will not come up George Washington. But keep calling people like me crazy and conspiracy theorists and tinfoil hat wearing weirdos when I'm just pointing out stuff you can verify yourself. Question is, you should ask, is why aren't you? Okay. Russell Hall says, the fact that Titanic was made to sink on purpose to make money from insurance. You're absolutely right. If you think the Titanic was hit by an iceberg, welcome to the world of propaganda. Research that. It was made to sink. All right, and Eddie B. and Russell and Eddie, thank you for being the people asking questions. Because when you're asking questions, that means you're inquiring. You want to spread your information. That's good to know. He says, could it be possible that the system simply crumbles on itself? Over time, eventually it does, because you can only scam people for so long before they finally wake up and realize. But usually at that point, they've had everything taken away to the point they have no choice. So they will always crumble on themselves. That's why you see all empires fall. But they don't fall right away. I mean, the Roman Empire lasted for thousands of years. Or hundreds of years, shall we say. So that's many a person's lifetime. So your grandfather's grandfather's grandfather will still be complaining about what you're complaining today. So it doesn't crumble right away. It can easily crumble if people stopped feeding the energy into it. But they do it because that's what they're told. Free will means you could do whatever you want, which means the right thing, the wrong thing, or nothing. And no one can make you do anything, but they sure as hell can scare you, bribe you, trick you. Because if they scare you into doing something, you still did it on your own. If they bribed you into doing something, you still did it on your own. Think about that. So he also says, I believe in karma, and I believe it is crumbling. They're getting desperate with all the false flags and bulk shootings. You're absolutely right, but it's not crumbling fast enough. And if it crumbles on its own, somebody else is going to come along and restart it. So it'll be nice for a little while. We'll think everything's wonderful, and then it'll go back to it. It's a vicious cycle. That's why they say when you don't research history, you're doomed to repeat it. You ever wonder why there have been so many revolutions throughout history, and yet we're still not in a utopia? It's that hello McFly moment. Please somebody explain anywhere in the world where their country is the place to be, where you have your rights to do whatever you want as long as you're not stealing or robbing or raping or killing or doing anything immoral or illegal. Please post the country where everybody needs to go, where everything, you have the liberty to do whatever you want. You don't have to work. Everything is free. Can anybody show me one country in the world? Bet you can't. Even if you believe in religion and the stories they put in the Bible and they talk about Adam and Eve, they didn't say God created Adam and Eve and then a toll booth and the IRS and a bank. They were supposed to be free to roam the earth. Are you free to roam? Last time I checked, you don't need a license to travel. You need a license to drive. Terminology. Got to learn terminology, legal definitions. That's why if you're a lawyer or you ever wanted to learn about law, watch the thousands upon thousands of books that you would have to read that are updated hourly. You ever think you're going to memorize it all? Nope. So even the best politicians, even the best lawyers with the best intent will never learn everything because they keep changing it. And as long as you play the game, they'll keep changing the game. So if you learn the magic trick, they'll just create another magic trick you haven't learned yet. And the sad part is when a magician pulls a rabbit out of a hat, when you're a child, you say, wow, how did he do that? When you're an adult, you say, I know how he did that. So they focus on the youth because the youth have what they call, or what they think they have, smarts. They think they know it all. They think they know it all. What do older people have? Wisdom. Why do you think most people that talk about this stuff are of the older generation. Very rarely you'll see a 13-year-old kid talking about this because they don't have the experience to know. They are just in school being programmed how to think. And by the time they grow older, they, through their experience, realize that all the things they were taught were lies, and that's when they talk about it. So think about that. When you're young, you think you're smart. You're just basically regurgitating what anyone else has taught you. You're a trained monkey to wave your hand in the air and pull the lever on the machine. When you're older, you realize, wait a minute, I'm doing it for the wrong reasons. I'm not promised the things that they said, and all the politicians lie. The banks steal my money. I'm getting poorer, not richer. I need to speak about it. By then, no one takes you seriously. That's the game we're in. And if you want to keep playing that game, you have that right. Your free will could let you say, this person that's speaking right now is crazy. I don't want to check any of this stuff out to prove I'm right or wrong, because I don't really want to know, because then I'll know that my life has been a lie, and then I'll actually have to do something about it. I'd rather sit there, like in the movie The Matrix, when that guy said ignorance is bliss as he's biting into that fake piece of steak that wasn't really there, but he could taste it because the senses said so. So he betrayed Morpheus to go back into the system, asking to be a wealthy person and not remember. Sound familiar to most people in this world? There are codes and messages everywhere. People choose not to hear them. People choose to dismiss them. And because of your free will and your belief system will create your own truth. So it will justify and verify everything that you believe in. Whether it's right or wrong, it's your own truth. So if you believe this is crazy, you're going to get plenty of information that's presented to you that will acknowledge and justify your belief system. It's whatever you want it to be. This is my truth that I'm trying to educate people with. I can't force you to do it. It's up to you. So once I stop this video, what happens from here, I can't control, nor do I want to. But if people are claiming to be as free as they want to be, there's going to be some sacrifices. You're not going to get free things anymore. You're not going to have other people telling you how to live and what to do. You know, if you're in jail for 50 years of your life, and you're told when to sleep, when to get up, when to eat, when to pee, when to shower, you're provided your clothes, you're provided your food, you're provided your shelter, you don't have to do anything if you don't want to, and then one day they open the doors and say, okay, you're free to go, 99% of them would crawl into the corner of the room screaming, shut the door. So do people really want to be free? Because freedom has a price. Are you willing to take the sacrifice? That's why I don't have a bank account. I have a federal credit union. I don't take out loans. I have a card where I can only spend what I have. If I don't have it, I don't get it. I don't put myself into debt. I don't borrow money. I don't take out loans. I don't use credit. That's the slave system. That's why if you know about currency, it's not money, it's currency. For currency to be created, it has to be borrowed into existence. It's a Ponzi scheme because they only create the principal amount, never the interest. You have to keep borrowing more principal to pay off the previous interest, which creates more interest, which continues on, upward and upward. And they'll scare you to think if you don't do it, things will collapse. They're right about that. Things will collapse for them. That's why when people like Obama say their slogan was change, they sure gave you change. Is it good change? He didn't say which kind of change, did he? He didn't start his campaign slogan by saying, we're going to change things by making it more socialist, more fascist, more communist. We're going to make people poorer, and we're going to change how much money you make and how jobs will be lost. That is change, so he kept his promise. Be careful what you wish for, you may get it. So we got one more, and then we're going to call it a night, and I appreciate those that listen. But Russell Hall says, talking about false flags, the sinking of the Lusitania, my history teacher told me so. Yeah, that's another thing. A lot of things you're told are lies or inaccurate. But like I said, you tell a lie long enough, it becomes the truth. And eventually, with movies and stuff, they'll make you dismiss things. I mean, I'll give you a prime example. If you talk about most people that are very religious, they'll believe an invisible God that they've never met, whether that's Buddha or Jesus or God or the Roman gods like Mars, Mercury, Venus. You ever wonder why they're named after planets? And that's when they talk about Jesus as the sun. You see a bright yellow halo. Well, you stand in front of the sun, that's what you're going to see. But yeah, look at the Roman gods. Mars, god of war. Mercury, with the little wings on his feet, Mercury dime, wings on his hat. Comic books, Flash. What did he originally have? Wings on his hat, just like the god of Mercury. Submariner, wings on his feet. These are not coincidences. Venus, the goddess of love. It's in there. But people don't want to know this stuff because it sounds crazy. Oh, look at reality. Is reality sane? Look at the reality. I went on a comic book channel because I was tired of the stress and harassment and death threats here, because it was something I used to love as a child, and I started helping people by trying to educate them, and I was doing nothing but give people stuff, promoting their channels, and the friends, it wasn't the trolls that got me, it was the ones that I considered friends who would continually backstab me and believe everything they heard without even asking me, went in my personal information to find out stuff without talking to me, that I finally said, these are men children who most of them will never grow up. I don't need to relate to those people anymore, and I left with no regrets. And yeah, here's another thing that's actually funny, and I'm glad, Eddie, you brought this up. Obama's slogan is, yes, we can. Now, I want you to do something. If you haven't checked anything, check this. Google yes, we can backwards. It says, thank you, Satan. And I've actually done it and proven it with friends, where if you have a recorder on your cell phone, so you can do it yourself, and you have to say it a certain way, otherwise it's going to sound a little blurry. So it's how you pronunciate. So I'm not exactly sure the exact pronunciation, but if you have a recording device on your computer, and most do, say yes, we can, and then play it backwards. It says, thank you, Satan. I've done it. I've had friends do it. It blows them away. They had you chant that several times in his campaign. Because remember, like I've said, and if this is the first video you've seen or heard, this will be new to you. If you live in the United States of America Corporation, if you have $1 or a $5 bill, a $10 bill, take it out. So if you have your wallet right now, or if you have any dollar bills near you, take it out. I'll give you a second. And if you don't have one, find one eventually and do this little experiment. Because you'll notice on every bill, it says the following: in God we trust. Now, you assume it's the particular God you believe in. The one, the white-bearded man living in the puffy clouds above the skies, which, by the way, if anything lives above the earth, it's not terrestrial, it's extraterrestrial, ET, alien. People won't believe in aliens, but they don't realize every religion has to do with their gods living above the earth. That's why, for example, the Romans had Mars and Venus and Mercury as their gods. Extraterrestrial. But you say the word alien, it sounds crazy because you watch nothing but alien movies on TV and movies, and you get so programmed to not believe it to be anything more than green men that are out to eat you. You won't believe in the fact that if you base every religion off of what reality is, they're always worshiping, they're looking above into the heavens, which means it's not from the earth, which means they're not terrestrial beings. That's why we are terrestrial beings. That's why we live in terra tories, and there is terra forming. They look up into the heavens. That's extraterrestrial, above the earth, alien. Hello. I went off track. I forgot what I was saying. So the idea is, and that's the ingeniousness of it, make it be so crazy that we could put it out in millions, or well, not millions, but thousands of people can talk about it, and people will automatically dismiss it, and they won't even check it to prove it right or wrong. That's how ingenious the plan is. 95% of the people that are watching this that don't know about this stuff and hearing it for the first time, 95% of you won't even verify it to check it. And as soon as I said that, 2 people left. Hopefully they left to go check it. And the view count can keep dropping. It doesn't matter to me, because you're only enforcing your own slavery. Another one really quick. Russell Hall says, Chris, have noticed that the number 88 is seen a lot because it's a code for Heil Hitler. That I don't know, but one thing I could tell you is if you see numbers the same all the time, it's reinforcing that you're on the right path. That's one of the things I know about it. That's why you'll see numbers like 1111 all the time. So if you're seeing the numbers to the point where you notice them, it's kind of like a signal saying you're going in the right direction. Now, that part I'm not very familiar with, so I can't say whether that's true or not, because it also depends on what you research about Germany. And that's a subject for another time. So I want to take this time to thank everybody that stayed and listened. What you do with this information is up to you. If you dismiss it, it continues. If you fight it in the way they want you to fight it, with guns and knives and sticks and riots and bottles, they'll just create more laws to enslave you. If you learn the truth of how you can do these things, you will take back your country, you'll take back your freedom. But be careful what you wish for, you might get it. Freedom is not easy. And most people don't want their freedoms that they really claim they do, because then they're responsible for everything they do. And as you can see in the welfare system, people like handouts. People like to be given things. You got to be a slave to get those free little carrots. Otherwise, you got to earn them yourself. And majority of people are scared to death of that. Guess we'll find out. So if you want to hit a like, you can. You want to be one of those people that hits the thumbs down, you're probably not even listening, because you're probably paid to troll, or you're just too asleep to ever pay attention. So if you want to thumb it down, congratulations on your achievement in the world. That's up to you. But I would hope the people that care will research and share this information, or make their own video. It doesn't have to be mine. You want to make your own? You can do it better? Please do. To me, it's not competition. It's about education and wisdom. Thank you for watching. I hope you will subscribe, and I hope you have a great day.